Welcome to the Spinwhiz Comics Show.
Whoa.
From Raleigh, North Carolina. Join us for exclusive interviews with the publishers bringing you the newest titles in indie comics, webcomics, movies, and more.
No way.
And now, here's your host, Jeff Palumbo.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. Hot damn, it's great to have you here. It's a Sunday night. I love pumping you guys up, either whether you feel like it's the end of your week and you're like, it feels good to hang out with Jeff at night because his voice is so relaxing. And I just put it in the background because I don't want to see his bald head, and that's fine. Or you might just be like, wow, this is like the beginning of my week. Like, this is how I get geared up. This is amazing. It doesn't matter why you're here. It matters that you're here, and I love your face for it. So thank you for coming. As always, I am your host of the Spinwhiz Comics Show. I'm also the owner of the Spinwhiz Comics website, iOS, Android, all that fun stuff. And every once a week, if not twice a week, I try to interview amazing people that are doing some crazy things, whether they're writers or creators or they're artists or colorists or however you want to talk about them. I try to bring them on so that they can get some love. And that's what we're all about here at Spinwhiz Comics. Plus, most of them are partners, so you can find their content on our site. But the gentleman I have on tonight does all of it. He's the end-to-end. I don't know if he drinks. We'll find out once we get into it with him. I don't just mean coffee. I mean maybe an adult beverage here and there. I don't know. I don't know him that well. We met through Snowy Works. Drew introduced us. Everybody, I'm trying to get Drew on the show. He keeps dodging me. I love the guy, but I'm pretty sure he's just like, I don't want to be with you on the show, which is fine. But he keeps cranking out stuff with Snowy Works, and this is one of the guys he brought on. But there's no reason for me to talk about it. I'm just going to bring him in. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show Jorge Zevalos, excuse me. Pardon my awful Spanish pronunciation.
That's right.
Welcome to the stream, man. Thanks for being here.
That's right. How you doing?
Good. So we talked briefly before.
Thank you for having us. It's going to be fun.
Heck yeah, man. I'm just glad somebody wants to come in and talk to me. This is great for everybody.
Yeah, no, it's I'm glad, like I said, like I mentioned before, I love to talk about comics specifically, and of course that kind of leads into the other media like film, but I always like to any chance I get to talk about comics, just because again I live in New York, and comics is kind of like it's a sort of, like I said, it's kind of become a little niche, like I said before. So most people that read comics, I would say, are kind of like, they're kind of like to themselves, I guess. They like read their little collection and they're like, I don't want to, leave me alone, whatever. But it's a lot of fun. There's a lot to get into in terms of like the craft of comics and how you do it and so forth. But you looked at the book, right? You checked out WALLBREAKERS.
The art's dope. It's really unlike anything I've seen.
Yeah, you should tell me kind of what you thought about it, because I love to hear the criticism. I love all criticism, good, or I don't even believe there's such a thing as bad criticism. I just think I love it all, actually. So, well, what do you think of?
I think the biggest thing I got out of it is I was like, this dude's making his own story. He's just like, I'm telling the story the way I want, and I was like, damn. Good for you. But I think the art is what got me. It reminds me of, how do I put it?
Let's see if you pick up some of the influences there. Let's see. Without me saying anything.
It's hard. I mean, it made me feel a little bit like, I got it in my head. I can see it.
Is it an artist, like a specific artist?
No, it's it is, but I usually know by art style, like not by the actual artist, but it reminded me a little bit of old school Watchmen.
Like Dave Gibbons or stuff like that?
Like that level of, because some of your lines are super crisp, but some of your colors blend.
Right.
And I'm like, that's awesome. Like, I don't know how the hell you did it.
Right. Well, I will get into it. It's sort of like, first of all, like I mentioned like to you earlier before the show, it was a really long process. It really initially was that story that ended up being kind of like a one shot was back when I was in school, like back when I went to like art college. I went to School of Visual Arts in New York, and I went and I was taught by Klaus Janson. You know, so you probably know Klaus Janson.
Not personally, but I know of him. Yeah.
Right, and he had a class at SVA. Of course, Walt Simonson was there too. David Mazzucchelli was there, but I didn't get to work with them. I didn't get to be taught by them. I met Walt Simonson years later and Mazzucchelli years later, but I'll get into that. But Klaus was really, which I don't know if it was like a good or bad thing, but you know, Klaus was really, at least at that time, was very the way he taught comics, he emphasized the importance of like the clarity in the storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it was all about. It wasn't even necessarily drawing because, and I learned that later, that's something that you can kind of like fix, you can adapt, you can simplify, you can adjust it, you know, based on how much talent you have, how much, you know, you don't have, you can kind of fix that. But the clarity of the storytelling, that's like that is what comics is. Like you have to, and it's true because imagine like each page, even in a comic, you only have so much space, so much real estate to take up to, you know, show specific scenes. Not to mention you have to factor in where the dialogue is going to be, and you know, you cannot have a page that's kind of like overly cluttered. Because you're using these like panels, but you have to give that feeling of it having kind of open space, and that's a kind of, you know, that's called visual storytelling, you know, and that's very complicated. That's something that you kind of have to, I think you can learn about it, but it's almost like any other kind of craft. You kind of just have to have a natural knack for it, and you hone it, you know, with time. But with this book specifically, I actually drew years ago. It was just 6 pages, no dialogue, but it was like years ago. Just this idea of like these aliens, like bursting out of a wall and chasing a guy down the street. And then in the original version, it was just 6 pages. The creatures were run over by like a huge truck, and that was it. It was like a simple, basic thing. Like I don't know why I did it. Just a stupid like summer project. and the art style was like weird. It was like a kind of, because at the time, you know, Klaus was bringing in when he was inking John Romita Jr. on Wolverine, he was doing like Enemy of the State, and he would show like the pages like of the Enemy of the State, like inks over Romita stuff. And it was like, so I was like mimicking Romita Jr. at that time. You know, I had a style that was mimicking him, which was, you know, he would do like this blocky stuff and everything. And so, but then years later, I remember at one point, I just was like, you know, I would go to comic shops, and like every 2 or 3 years, like I would go once, I would do a 360. I couldn't find anything I like. Maybe I'll get some back issues, because I always went to back issues, even when I used to buy stuff like during high school years. Even like, you know, I would go to this comic store. At that time, I was supposed to use that money for like food, but I would, like at the end of the week, I would buy like PlayStation Magazine. Like that was the thing first that. And then you would go to the comic shop, and like the rest of the money you would have, you would buy the comics. And what I like about it was, you know, at that time they were selling like, you know, they were 99-cent comics, which is why in my head it's like, that makes sense to me. Like, you know, to me, 99-cent comics, yeah, that's fine. But I would buy, you know, the Mike Wieringo Spider-Man. I would buy like, you know, Spawn was there, whatever. But, and they had like Deadpool, Ed McGuinness Deadpool. I wouldn't buy that. But I always, for some reason, even in my youth, even when like people were pushing, you got to buy Batman Hush. You got to buy, you know, or maybe like further back, like, you know, Jim Lee's doing Heroes Reborn or something. And there was like this push to buy whatever was like the hot thing. And I would try to like look at it and be like, I mean, yes, it's a lot of rendering here. There's like a lot of hatching, but it just, for some reason, it didn't like, make me want to draw or something. But I would go to the back issues, and then I would find like some random Topps comics, like with Jack Kirby cover or something. Or I remember the book that really kind of like got me thinking to do, which was like the seed that was sown in to eventually end up for me making WALLBREAKERS, was I discovered Joe Kubert's tour comics from the 90s. He did these like magazine size tour comics that he wrote, he inked, he lettered, and colored everything himself. And I was exposed to Joe Kubert for the first time. And those books, even though those drawings, Joe Kubert's stuff, it's like his drawings are actually so well done that you can ink them really crudely and it would still look good. That's what I like about Joe. And he would put shadow. It was kind of like crazy. Like I would see his drawings and it's not like detailed, but it's just he just can draw. Like he could draw, and he could take a stick and put it in mud and like just use that on the page. But that was like the awakening. It was like, wow, like that's what a comic is. It's a guy writes a story, does everything. That's what it is. And then years later, I just decided when I couldn't find anything in the store that just called to me. And the stuff that I like, even back, like I mentioned to you before, yes, I would pick up whatever was the hot thing at whatever time that was. But I personally felt much more attracted to, we're talking EC Comics, like Johnny Craig and Jack Davis and Bernie Krigstein, really thick lines. And when I found out about Mobius, like the French comics, Heavy Metal Magazine, which you see kind of some of that influence in the book. But that's really what attracted me. It was just the kind of like the older work to me. It just seemed more, and I'm going to use this word, sincere. It was not like, okay, I'm copying somebody who came before me blatantly. Of course, yes, there are artists who are influenced by people that came before them. Like I can tell you Mobius was influenced by Winsor McKay. I can see it in his work. But it's not so like blatant. It's like you can see it, but and he ended up doing his own thing later on. Well, like you can look at some of that stuff. I go, yeah, this is Winsor McKay. I can see that. But I just like I just like the older stuff. I like the weird, like Steve Ditko Spider-Man is so bizarre, kind of off-putting, really sometimes. But maybe that was the point. But and I like that. So anyway, so this whole thing, this WALLBREAKERS thing, it was in stages. It was like, okay, I want to take those 6 pages and I want to just make it bigger and bolder, more personality, emphasis on building like a world and just doing what I never did before, which was like, I felt before I did WALLBREAKERS, I had limitations or the previous work was like, there's potential there, but you could see there was walls there. Like, there was maybe anatomy was not really there. I never really drew environments really. So I made a list of like, okay, the next thing I do is going to be much larger. It's going to be a book. It's going to have, I did some lettering before, but can you hear me, by the way?
Yep, you're cutting in and out a little bit. Hello? But only video. Audio's fine. You're
okay. Would you prefer that I do just audio, or I'm good?
No. You're doing it. Just every now and then it glitches, but you're smiling, and each time that it stops, so you're good to go.
Okay. So just let me know if anything I can do to help it out. But so what was I gonna say? Right. So I wanted to do a book that just took my ability and push it to another level. That was the point of WALLBREAKERS. Like take, my limitation and just forcibly, go past it. That's why that book was really so difficult to do, because I realized how much I sucked Like I realized how how limited I was in a lot of ways, and it was really difficult. My ego was annihilated in the process of that because, you know, maybe as you know, or other creators know, there's so many things that you don't actually know how to draw unless you like, you just have to kind of make those mistakes, you know?
That's for sure.
So I wanted to, yeah, like I wanted to put like if you look at the book, there's a specific, I told you I was a big movie guy. I wanted things like, this book was like a mix of different loves. It was a mix of traditional comic book creation, which was, you know, hand lettering, penciling, inking with a brush, which that book was primarily 90 to 95% inked with a brush. So we're talking even the cars, the buildings, pretty much everything except for the border panels and the lettering was done with a brush. So because I wanted to get that control, like some of the older guys, you know, who would do these comics, it was almost every, we're talking in the 50s or something, right? So I wanted to do that, and so that's why, like, and I love movies, and I was thinking, okay, I want to make a movie that's kind of has that visceral kind of action feeling to it, which is like, I think of movies like French Connection or Jackie Chan Police Story or a Die Hard, you know, specifically Die Hard 3 with a Vengeance, where he's going through New York, he's driving the cab. You know, I wanted that kind of visceral thing in there. So I was able to, you know, put that there and put some of the horror elements in there, and yeah, and that's that we ended up getting this comic, by the way. So
I mean, I would say it's good. And what I meant by color is that it's not your traditional color, like you don't have greens and blues and stuff like that. What I meant is some of the scenes in it, especially the ones that don't have a lot of chat bubbles, you had, I say colored, but it's probably the wrong term. You had blended in like deep inks, but it looks like, I didn't know that it was painted, but it gives you almost a colored or animated is the wrong word, motion look by using what I would consider coloring, but coloring black.
And
or tones, I guess, like the black and white tones.
Right. Yeah, it's and I can explain that just briefly. It's because I was drawing that book. I was taking the book whenever I could to different conventions with me. So I was showing it to professionals. I was, you know, to the professionals whose work I liked. So I showed it to Walt and Louise Simonson, and they liked it. Eric Larson. I showed it to John Paul Leon. Told me he was the one that told me to ink the book.
Oh wow!
It was just pencil, and I didn't intend to. Yeah, and I didn't intend to ink it because that's why it's so detailed. Because if I was gonna ink it, I would not have really gone that crazy with the detail, because, you know, that's like double the work. So I was just drawing it. I wasn't intending on inking it. But John Paul Leon was like, well, I mean, you kind of have to, because that's like, that's what you do. I mean, you can't just like leave it like that, you know?
Yeah.
So I ended up doing that. And I don't know about you, but, you know, I used to go to art museums, and when I would look at oil paintings, I would look at the way the painter would push the brush in, you know, the direction he would push the paint in with the brush, so that you can see the strokes.
Yeah,
and when you see those strokes, you can kind of get a sense of the roundness of things, or the you know, the texture or things like that. It gives it volume, and that's kind of how I kind of inked the thing. It was kind of more loose, but with a brush. And I remember when I went to like South Korea, and I showed those pages to Kim Jong. Who's that? Not Kim Jong. Who's that Korean artist that he does like those live drawings? Like I can't. What's his name? is it Kim Jong? I don't know. Anyway, it's like this really well known Korean artist who does like these live drawings. And he's like he basically draws without any like penciling. It's just,
I know who you're talking about. I can see
right.
him on my head, but I cannot remember
Right.
his name.
I'm forgetting the name, but yeah, he has like glasses and everything. So it was cool. I went to a convention, and it was like a line of people there, right? And so I'm like waiting there. Luckily, the manager, I think he did speak English. The artist didn't speak, but he had a translator. So he asked me like, "Oh, do you want to come up and get it?" Because I bought one of his books. Like, you want to get it signed? He did like a little drawing in there. But then I was like, I want to show him my pages. He says, yeah, you can show him your pages. So I showed him the WALLBREAKERS book. And for like 10 minutes, we were just talking with a translator. And he actually drew like little parts of my comic, in his style, like on a separate piece of paper with a brush. It's kind of cool to look at, like how he drew.
I can't even imagine.
Yeah, it's actually kind of, and I have those drawings like with me, but it's kind of cool. And we were just talking about like, a way of inking, like a different way, and I told him like, yeah, John Paul Leon, he told me how I can ink it, and then he drew like, but in the John Paul Leon style, heavy like shadows. It's funny how he was mimicking John Paul Leon.
That's
like,
crazy.
Yeah, it was actually cool. It was like 10 minutes, we back and forth. I shook his hand, and it was like awesome. It was like really cool. So I had a really amazing time with this book, just showing it to like David Mazzucchelli, Neil Adams, and just Eric Larson and all these people. It was like a lot of fun because the people would gather around me. Like I remember Eric Larson, he had all his Savage Dragon pages like all over the table, like because he had just got him lettered, hand lettered, right? Mm-hmm. And so I showed him my book. He was eating like a hot dog, and I said, "Can I show you like some pages?" He said, yeah. You put the hot dog to the side, and then we opened the portfolio, and all these people started gathering, and we're all looking at the pages. And he just told me like, you got to find a way to simplify this because you can't do this on a deadline. I was like, yes, I know. I'm gonna find a way. It's true. I can't do it on a deadline. There's no way. But that was like that was a lot of fun. So finally, because of Drew and Snowyworks and everything, we ended up like meeting through like forum, like I think Digital Webbing or something. And that was going to be in an anthology originally. But then we kind of went back and forth. I was like, you know what? I kind of want to do this like as a one shot because, then I had made a cover for it and I colored the cover. So that's what it ended up being. And so because, thanks to Drew and Snowyworks, now it's like out for most people to go check it out. So I am grateful for that, but it was like such a long road, like just to get that thing out there. It was you're looking at the book, it's a lot of work there, it's a crazy
yeah, a little bit,
yeah. So but that's only because I just, like I said, we're gonna get into it too. It's like I just love movies, but like, and I'll ask you like, because I like to ask people their favorite kind of movies, because with that I get a little taste, a little insight into your psychology and a little sense of like your taste, you know what I mean? So let me ask you this, and I know this is hard, you don't have to rank them, but just give me like 2 movies that for sure you will revisit because you love them so much.
Only 2? Holy crap.
I mean, I know you, well, I mean, if you want, we can make it like 3,
I would say the original Star Wars trilogy.
Okay.
Harry Potter.
Okay.
And I would say Goonies.
Right. Okay. So let me, because I love this because Star Wars is so, kind of it gets people riled up. So I love that. Mm-hmm. So what about the original trilogy? Why is it that you like that? The original.
I think what it got me going is I was 6 years old when I first saw it. And again, I was born in 78. It came out in 77.
Right.
And they were promoting, when I first saw Star Wars, like A New Hope, they were promoting Empire.
Oh.
So for me, it was one of the first movies that I ever remember, outside of E.T.
Right.
And it was having something like the Force,
right,
a magical power,
Right.
was neat. I think that was the main thing, and it was my first taste of good versus evil.
Right.
And even now, I am drawn more to clear black and white good and evil than I am to anti-heroes or the gray
that
scale.
kind of gray area thing. Yeah.
Yep. So I think that's why. Plus, who didn't want a lightsaber?
Right. Yeah. Right. I mean, it's kind of amazing because, I wasn't around when the original, at least the first 2 movies came out. So I ended up coming across them because they ended up doing those special editions later on.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so that's how I kind of got introduced. And at the time, I was like really young. They came out with the special editions. I didn't understand why those movies were so great. However, at the time, I acknowledged like, wow, these movies have some really unique designs, right? So it was more like a superficial interest in those movies the first time around. But the older I got, the more I kind of saw why those films, specifically the first one, was such a cultural impact. It has such a huge cultural impact because, again, I'm as an outsider. I wasn't there, but constantly looking at documentaries and stuff like that. It's like they talk about the landscape of the cinema before Star Wars came and then after Star Wars. Before, it was like all these kind of movies about Vietnam and like gangster films and crime dramas and Exorcist or something like that. I don't know if Exorcist came before or after, but these movies were like, it was kind of dark. A lot of these films were like, realistic, gritty, dark kind of films. Here comes Star Wars, which is about, it's sort of like it's a swashbuckling type of space opera, but within it there are these themes of like you said, good and evil, spirituality, your hero's destiny, right? Things like that. And it was so upbeat. It was so like kind of like joyous. And people were like having fun in a cinema, right? Like for the first time in a long time, people were like, wow. But it wasn't like it wasn't, yes, on the surface, it seemed like a, B movie, I guess, in a way. But obviously there was much more thought that was put into that film. That's why it was so culturally impactful. Not to mention it was pushing technology to places it's never been, right? It really pushed cinema in that sense. So to me, I get it now, but specifically the second one, Empire, was very sophisticated. I mean, much more sophisticated, even though I think the cultural impact really was with the first one. That was the really, and if I had to watch it too, I would say, I mean, I just love those, for me, the second film, those scenes with Yoda, the training, talking about the Force, good and evil, that black and that white, that's something that actually I think stories that have those characters so clearly defined, I think those are the ones that hit harder, as opposed to the sort of post-Watchmen where everything, whatever is good and bad, it's all relative, and it's not, there's no such thing as morality, it just depends on your point of view. That kind of thing is just doesn't really, it doesn't leave a memory, really. It doesn't sear it into your head. You don't, if you, when you watch a movie that is kind of gray, you don't feel what I think as an audience, when you go watch a movie, you don't feel the exultation nor the devastation when the hero fails or when he rises to the occasion. You don't get those highs and those lows because the stakes are not, dramatically stacked, as opposed to, if it's a gray area kind of thing, maybe he wins, maybe he doesn't. It doesn't matter anyway. It's like you're just don't really care, really.
Right.
So like, and I could give you a real quick one, and maybe you see. Did you ever see the movie Whiplash?
Oh God, a long time ago.
Right, but you remember that movie, right?
Yeah.
So, and I'm gonna bring that up real quick. It's like that movie. I don't know about you, but that movie, and I mentioned this many times before, it's like a mirror. Like every movie, I find that it's a mirror because it shows you what your thinking is, depending on your reaction of the film. So Whiplash divides people, because either you think that yes, this music teacher, yes, he was brutal, yes, he was extremely rough, but look what he did for this student who rose to the occasion.
Mm-hmm.
He ended up becoming this amazing drummer, and at the end of that movie, that was one of the most like exhilarating endings I think of every movie I've ever seen, where he ends up doing that drum solo, and it's so amazing that it just made me like literally stand up and just be like, that was just, because he finally overcame the teacher. He became what he wanted to be, what he thought maybe he couldn't be. He overcame it. He became this great drummer. So I like those highs and those lows. But anyway, I think I rambled about that a little too long.
No, I don't disagree with you, and I'm 100% with you. But it wasn't until I was trying to find something on TV, and I got so bored of the gray.
Right.
Of like, listen, I don't want to think. Mm-hmm. I want there to be a hero and a villain, and I want the villain to be badass, and I want the hero to at least try to be.
Right.
Like, because I think right now, and this is a personal opinion, this is not a Spinwhiz based opinion.
This is great. I want to hear it.
This is a Jeff Palumbo based opinion.
Okay. Cool.
It's that we don't have enough heroes who know how to be heroes, who want to be heroes.
Right.
We have a lot of people who see the gray and do whatever the hell they please based off of their vision of a situation.
Right.
And that is not to say that firefighters and police officers and doctors are not heroes. They 100% are.
Right.
But what I mean is, in television and in movies, I don't find many people who go and say, this is a situation, and everybody is like, yes, that is a situation.
Right. Yeah, it's true. I think it's a what's the word I'm going to use? It's a result of, because the thing is there's a sort of, specifically in Hollywood and that kind of like realm, it's a sort of demoralization, really. So there is no morality. And when you take morality out, you really cannot have a hero, because that is the point of a hero. He upholds something that is intangible, which is morality, which is something that transcends money or fame or any of these things. You do something because instinctually, as a moral person, this is what must be done, no matter what happens to me. You have to remove the selfish aspect of yourself and rise to the occasion as a moral person. But if you are immoral or you're demoralized, you cannot be a hero, because even if you do something, let's say on the surface level, that is, somebody says, oh, this guy saved like a bunch of kittens from burning in a building or something, right? Now it all depends on, did he do that because he understands that there is innocence in life here that can be saved, and let me save it? Or am I doing it because I want to show up on the news so they could tell me that I'm this great hero? That's what makes a hero, really. It's the core of the character. So it's not so much what you do, it's the motivation. Right. Why did you do it? That is the hero. That's what it is.
I agree.
So, right. So anyways, but back, so and not to take away, by the way, going back to the WALLBREAKERS thing, that was I ended up writing some of that stuff, but even now, like thinking back, you can see it, that and I think Dave Mazzucchelli, he pointed out that as the book went on, I started to become more comfortable with what I was doing. Because when you first do something, you're not quite sure. You're kind of dipping your feet in the water. Yeah. And especially for me, this is a whole new territory. I mean, I'm drawing, specifically, I drew, if you look at the book, the character has like a kind of little car chase there. And that is a specific car. I wanted a specific car called the Mercedes-Benz 300 SL. They call it the Gull Wing because the doors open up on the sides like that. So it's like the Gull Wing, and it's a beautiful car. It's a beautiful vintage car. I'm not a car person, but I just like the curves of that car. And I get to ink that with a brush and everything. So I had to draw from the back, from the front, from the top, from the side, all these different angles. And it was just, you'd be amazed how, like, if you're not used to doing something like that, it really kind of gets annoying because, something like drawing like a tire in correct perspective is kind of tough. Just something like that, like just the tire, it has to be in the right perspective. Otherwise,
right.
It looks off.
Yeah, looks like a weird donut.
Yeah, it looks like a weird donut. So, but now looking back, that character is kind of like anti-hero, because when I started writing it, my thinking now, I'm very much clear cut on what makes a stronger story. And hopefully, and I have another book on my desk that I'm talking to Drew, maybe to do another one. But it's going to be something completely different. It's going to be more traditional superhero American comic, but it's going to have a kind of like a little bit of a slight sci-fi kind of twist. And it's going to be not as necessarily detailed, but it's going to be bigger, heavier, bolder lines, clearer storytelling, and it's just bigger. That's the thing I'm thinking. Heavier, bigger, bolder, clearer. That's what I'm looking for the new one.
Sounds like an awesome pay-per-view.
Yeah. I just get the feeling of like, WALLBREAKERS was exactly what it was. It was a wrecking ball. It was like, okay, here's my walls, here's my limitation. We're gonna just plow through this thing, no matter how difficult it is, how much I suck. Let's just let's just ram through this thing and just just like a bull, just blow your way through it and just smash, And I made so many mistakes, like, oh my gosh, and I had to fix them all. But that was the point. Yeah, that was the point. It was like the lettering, I messed up an S. Okay, well, you have to do the whole bubble because this is not digital. You can't just like get on your keyboard and tweak that. No, you have to get a fresh piece of paper, put the Ames lettering guide, take your little pen and do it all over again until you get it right. It was things like that. It was old school, completely old school, right? Just completely old school. And that was the point. But now that we kind of went through that, and it was really painful, now I learned, okay, maybe I could have done things a little bit easier. But that's the way you learn. It's like so now I'm looking for the mistakes because I know once I encounter that, I'll be good. It's like, okay, I'm gonna fix it, and that's so I'm okay. Before, it used to devastate me when I would make mistakes. Now it's like, oh, okay, I see that now. Okay, we just keep moving.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So we've already been talking for like 40 minutes. It's not a bad thing. These are good conversations. But okay. What because we have to wrap up here soon.
Right.
What is next for you? I mean, WALLBREAKERS is out. It's on Spinwhiz. The links are in there. So just so everybody knows, if you're on Facebook Live, obviously you can see the links. If you're on YouTube, just scroll below Jorge and I. Yes. They're right there. They're easy to see. Go read it. He wants you to read it. And then if you like it, then you buy it. That's the way it goes.
99 cents. Oh.
Yeah. Drew wants you to buy it too.
Right.
But I mean, you're obviously unbelievably intelligent as well, which I find a lot of creators are.
Yes.
But, with everything that you have going on, everything that you're really enjoying, I feel like you could really do anything you want. But what's next for you?
Well, like I said, it's this is the next thing. Like I mentioned, it's that next story superhero thing, and I just want to do something that is different than WALLBREAKERS because just for me personally, like in order for me to draw something, I need to like find the style or something new so that it kind of excites me and it looks different than what I did before. I don't really like to like have a style and just like go over and over and over. I don't like to do that. Like it has to be unique and different from what I did before. So that's kind of what's on the table. And I'm talking to Drew. It's a possibility we'll get something done. But this time, like I said, WALLBREAKERS was black and white. Mm-hmm. We may color it later down the road, but this new book has got to be in color, full color. And I just want it to feel like, my version of like a kind of golden age type book. And when I say golden age, I don't mean like you know, I don't know, like kind of like cheesy kind of thing, but there's something kind of genuine about the drawings in those golden age
the
books.
style.
They didn't try to like impress you. You know, they were like blue collar guys. We got to get paid. Give me that number 7 brush, and I got to finish this book like in 3 days.
Yeah.
You know, it's like that kind of energy.
Yep.
That's kind of what I want, you know, in the new one. So that's it, pretty much.
I think you're going to do great, man. I can't wait to see it.
Yes, thank you.
Honestly, awesome. So, listen, everybody, the links are in the chat. I'm going to drop a couple more. If you're in YouTube, it's going to be a little bit easier to grab. I think you're going to be blown away. Like I said before, it reminded me, now that we're kind of talking about it, the stylized, it does kind of feel like an older style to me. And I think the Watchmen was probably all the alien stuff.
Oh, you know what? It's funny that you bring that up, because I only had realized that until like I hadn't even actually read Watchmen when I was doing that.
Oh, wow.
No, I read it much later on. Like I read it, but it kind of hit me because I had heard that there was like an ending to Watchmen like that. I was like, oh yeah, well, it's already on my board. Like I'm not gonna change it. Like it's already on there. So whatever, right?
It's
like,
done, man. Sorry about that.
What am I gonna do? Yeah.
Well, I think it's great. I mean, I think you're great. You're doing. I mean, I look forward to it, man. I look forward to having you back on the show, because I feel like you and I could just talk for hours and just shoot the shit about all sorts of really cool stuff. So I'm gonna drop.
I didn't even get to interview you, really. Like I didn't get to ask you questions, but
next time, man. This is just getting to know each other. The next one's gonna be the more fun one.
Right.
So I'm dropping a couple links in there for some reviews. One on Indie Comic Dispatch and the other on Pulp Press. Again, if you're on Facebook Live, you can see them in there now. If you are on YouTube, you can just scroll down and you can grab them. You can get Jorge's WALLBREAKERS on SpinwhizComics.com, as well as all of Snowyworks stuff. And we have another one going up this week, actually, from a brand new one coming up. And Drew said that's the end, but somehow I don't think so. He keeps cranking out more and more content. He's a beast.
Yeah.
So listen, man, hang with me real quick. I want to say goodbye to you offline. Well, still online, but off screen. So hang with me. Ladies and gentlemen, Jorge, go pick it up. Go check it out. Go back them. If you like it, buy it. If you can't buy it because you can't afford it because 2020 sucks an ass, then tell your friends about it, and maybe they can do it. So again, Jorge, thanks for being here, man. I greatly appreciate it. Wonderful, wonderful talking to you. Can't wait to do it again. Thank you so much. Hang on the line for me.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, man. Was I not right? Was the dude not cool? Like, so happy I'm getting to meet this guy. Honestly, I'm glad you get to as well, because he is going to be doing, like, I could see him tomorrow going outside and doing drumming, just because he's like, I had this beat in my head and I had to get it out. And then the next day he's cutting glass bottles in half and, making them into cups, because he had an idea of how he's transitioning the old Star Wars, cups, and he wanted to make his own for WALLBREAKERS or something. Like, his mind is traveling 1,000,000 times a minute. You can tell how intelligent the dude is, and you just know that while he's here sitting in front of you, he's actually like the Flash, and he's actually 5,000 different places at once. So, which is kind of like the way I am. So I'm glad to meet somebody else that is like me. That's just kind of like, well, damn. So anyway, thank you all for being here. Greatly appreciate it. Have a wonderful week. We'll see you back here on Wednesday night. Frank Gogol, I think, is on the show. Let me double check. I don't know if I'll be able to check it out or not. Wait a minute. I think I closed that window. I accidentally closed another window during the interview that was for Jorge, and hopefully it didn't show up on the video. Not that it was anything crazy, but let me see. Who do I have on the 18th? Oh, Brian Lau is going to be here from Staunch Ambition, and then next Friday is Frank Gogol from Source Point Press. So thank you all for being here. Have a wonderful night. Thank you for spending some time with me. Hope to see you on Wednesday. Have a great night. Later.